Hey sis, hey bro, you may not be infertile. You may just not have the correct information on the proper ways to achieve pregnancy. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you how to achieve pregnancies, the best ways in order to get pregnant. The first thing you need to know is how is a baby formed? A baby is formed when a sperm meets an egg and fertilization occurs. That is how a baby is formed. So, in other words, you want to conceive naturally, then you have to have sexual intercourse so that a man deposits the sperm into your vagina and then the sperm goes all the way to meet the egg and then fertilization occurs. The first tip I'm going to be giving you today is actually the best tip on how to conceive naturally, and that is just knowing your fertile window. As a woman, every month you have about 9 days, when you are most fertile. So fertile window simply means a number of days, that a woman, when she has sexual intercourse, has the highest chances of getting pregnant. So how to know your fertile window is you need to know your cycle length. So what is a cycle length? A cycle length is simply the number of days in between your periods, counting from the very first day that you see your period blood to the last day before you see your next period. This is your cycle length. And this number of days, for it to be normal, it has to be between 21 days and 35 days. Now, note that cycle length is different from normal period duration. So, period duration is the number of days that you bleed. That is, normal period duration is between 2 days and 7 days, of which the average is about 4 to 5 days. So, usually a woman will bleed 4 days in a month, 5 days in a month. But if you bleed 2 days in a month, that's also normal. If you bleed 7 days in a month, that's also normal. So period duration is different from cycle length. So you need to know your cycle length when you want to know your fertile period. So now that I've shown you and I've taught you how to calculate your cycle length, you need to know how to calculate your ovulation. Ovulation is simply release of a mature egg from the ovaries into the fallopian tube. Remember I told you that for a baby to be formed, we need an egg and we need a sperm because we need fertilization to occur. So ovulation is simply release of the egg from the ovaries into the fallopian tube. So if I haven't already said it, let me say it. So remember I said the normal cycle length is 21 days to 35 days. So even if you have 22-day cycle length this month, and you have 25 days the next month, and you have 34 days the next month, that is still a regular cycle length because it still falls within 21 days and 35 days. So now you know your cycle length. Let's assume that your cycle length is 28 days. You subtract 14 days from that and you'll be left with 14, meaning that on day 14 of your menstrual cycle, that is the time you are most likely to ovulate. The same goes if you have a 27-day cycle, you subtract 14 days and it will give you 13, meaning that on day 13, counting from the first day you see your period to day 13, that day 13 is the most likely time that you are to ovulate. And if you notice, I keep saying most likely. I'm not saying, oh, this is the time that you are ovulating. No, I'm like, it's the most likely time you are to ovulate because we cannot really tell the exact date a woman will ovulate. So the reason we are subtracting 14 days is because 14 days is what we call the luteal phase. Luteal phase is simply the number of days from after ovulation till you see your next period. So it's not always 14 days. 14 days is the average amount of days, for a luteal phase, but it's usually between 11 to 17 days, no more than 18 days. So now we're going to use the average length of the luteal phase, which is 14 days, and then we're going to subtract 14 days because if luteal phase is occurring from after ovulation till you see your next period, then meaning that if we subtract 14 days, that is whatever is left is the day that we are actually ovulating. So now back to the 28-day woman. So if we subtract 14 days from 28 days, she's likely to ovulate on day 14. So now, because we can't absolutely say that she's ovulating on day 14, what we now do is we give room, we give space, for the possible days she could ovulate. So we say we either add 2 to 14 or subtract 2 from 14. So it means that 14 plus or minus 2, meaning she could ovulate on day 12, 13, 14, 15, and day 16. And another interesting thing to know is that the sperm can live in the woman's reproductive tract for about 5 days. It doesn't necessarily have to be 5 days all the time. It can be 3 to 5 days. So now that being said, remember that we said ovulation is not constantly on that, day. So we said 14 plus or minus 2, right? So we said 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now we're going to take the earliest possible day that she can ovulate, which is day 12. Then we'll count 5 backwards because remember, the sperm can live in the female reproductive tract for up to 5 days. So now when we count 12 backwards, that's going to start from day 8. So it means that day 8, day 9, day 10, day 11, day 12, day 13, day 14, day 15, and day 16. This is 9 days in a month that when this woman has sexual intercourse, she has the highest chance of conceiving. So does it mean that every day of these 9 days, she has to have sexual intercourse in order to get pregnant? And the answer is no. This is because studies have shown that when a man abstains from sex for about 2 to 3 days, it gives him the best sperm quality. So we don't want having sex every day of these 9 days, when you're trying to get pregnant. So when you have sex every other day, that is, you have today, you don't have tomorrow, you have the next day, every other day, that increases your chances of getting pregnant. So now this is not a strict rule. You don't have to start over micromanaging your sex life and all of that. That takes the fun away and takes the intimacy away from, having sexual intercourse and trying to get pregnant. But the idea is for you to just have a general understanding, a general knowledge, of the proper way to have sexual intercourse when you are trying to achieve pregnancy. Another thing you can do when trying to get pregnant is actually monitor your vaginal discharge. So you're monitoring your cervical mucus. So the discharge is coming out from your cervix. So we call it the cervical mucus, but that's what you see as your vaginal discharge. So now the vaginal discharge, the consistency changes throughout your cycle. So by the time you start seeing a change in your cervical mucus, in your vaginal discharge, once it starts getting light, thin, transparent, when it starts getting stretchy, it means that it's fertile. It means that you are about to ovulate or you have ovulated. So now what you do is you pick your vaginal discharge using your index finger and your thumb, and then you stretch it. When you see that it is transparent, it's light, it's stretchy, then you are most likely to ovulate soon or you have just ovulated. We usually call this mucus the fertile mucus. So once you see this change, you know that it's time to start having sexual intercourse if you're trying to conceive. Another thing is you can get ovulation prediction kits. And this kit is sold in the stores, in the malls, in the pharmacies. You can just walk in, it's over the counter, you don't need a prescription for it. Just walk in and buy an ovulation prediction kit. Now, what this kit does is it tests your urine for a hormone called luteinizing hormone, LH. Now, this hormone usually surges in the body 24 to 48 hours before you ovulate. So what you do is you're testing your urine with this kit daily. The minute you see that it's positive, it means that you should have sexual intercourse within 24 to 48 hours of seeing the first positive results. So this brings me to the best time you can have sexual intercourse in order to get pregnant. I already mentioned it's your fertile window, right? But in your fertile window, right? If you have sexual intercourse 2 days before ovulation, 1 day before ovulation, or the day of ovulation, those are the highest possible, like the highest chances, you can get pregnant. But remember, it doesn't mean that if you have sex 3 days before ovulation, you won't get pregnant. You can get pregnant even 5 days before ovulation. I'm just trying to use this to explain how important and how helpful the ovulation predictor kit can be. Also, when you're trying to get pregnant, you need to start preparing your body. You need to start preparing your uterus to receive a baby. You need to start preparing your uterus for pregnancy. And how can you do this? You can start with prenatal vitamins. These vitamins are supplements that you take when you're trying to get pregnant. And one of the most important ingredients, the most important content you need to look out for in your prenatal vitamin is called folic acid. Now, this folic acid is going to help prevent what we call a neural tube defect. So once you start trying to conceive or you start having sexual intercourse unprotected, you need to start being on folic acid daily. And the dosage is at least 400 micrograms of folic acid daily. And then watch what you eat. You need to eat balanced diet. Have your carbs, your proteins, your vitamins, your fats, but make sure that you focus more on vegetables and fruits. So in addition to that, you need to exercise. Exercise, mild to moderate exercise, at least 3 to 4 times in a week. Maintain a healthy weight. Studies have shown that being extremely overweight or extremely underweight can affect your chances of getting pregnant. Avoid smoking, whether it's active smoking or passive smoking. What I mean by this is whether you're the one smoking, your partner is the one smoking, or none of you are smoking, but you're constantly in environments where people are smoking. Studies have shown that this can lead to recurrent miscarriages and can affect fertility. Also, avoid excessive drinking. As a man, avoid heat around your genitals because the sperm requires a cool environment for production to occur. So if there is heat, it will affect sperm production. So if you're working from home and you're always putting your laptop on your thighs, you need to stop doing that now. Or you're always going to the jacuzzi or the sauna, you need to stop doing that now because there are studies that have shown that this has led to the reduction of sperm counts. So if you've been having regular sexual intercourse, that is, you've been having penetrative sexual intercourse, ejaculatory sexual intercourse, and you've been having sexual intercourse regularly for at least 12 months and you've not conceived, and you've also been monitoring your fertile window, having sex at the right time with everything I've just mentioned, you're eating healthy, you're exercising right, and you have still not gotten pregnant after 12 months, then you need to go to see your healthcare provider for evaluation. So for some couples, you don't have to try for 12 months. You can try for just six months before going to see your healthcare provider. And couples that should try for only 6 months before going to see the healthcare provider for evaluation are couples that, if the woman is 36 years and above, every woman is born with a particular amount of eggs in her ovaries. And as she reaches puberty, she's releasing the egg. With each menstruation, she's releasing a particular amount of egg every month. So by the time she gets to 36 years old, fertility has significantly declined. I need to mention that as you're releasing this egg every month, nothing is replacing the eggs. So by the time you get to 36, fertility has significantly declined. We don't want you to wait for up to 12 months before you come and do an evaluation. Also, even if you're not up to 36 years old and you have been diagnosed with PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, or any other gynecological disorder that could potentially affect fertility, then you don't need to wait for up to 12 months. After like 6 months of trying, you go see your healthcare provider for evaluation. Now, when you get to the healthcare provider's office, what will they do for you? For the man, what we do is called a semen analysis. And how we do this analysis is that we get the semen sample via masturbation. So the man will go to a room, a private room, and then masturbate into a container. But before this, he will be told that he needs to abstain from sexual intercourse for about 3 to 7 days because we need to get the best sperm possible in order to do the test so that we can have a true picture of what your sperm health is. So now what we are checking for in the lab is the sperm counts. So the semen, which is what the man ejaculates, is like fluid, but the sperm is inside, and that sperm you cannot see. What you're seeing is the semen. The sperm makes up about 5% of the entire semen, right? And this 5%, the normal amount, the normal sperm count is supposed to be about 15 million to about 200 million sperm cells per ejaculate. Also, we want to check the motility of the sperm. How fast is the sperm moving? Because remember that it's only one sperm that will end up fertilizing the egg. So we want to check how many percentage of your sperm, is swimming fast enough to be able to go and get to the egg. Also, we need to check the shape of the sperm. So the sperm has a normal shape, which is it has a head and it has a tail. So if we check the shape and then the shape now has two heads, the sperm has two heads or two tails, that's an abnormal sperm. So what we do is we now look at these parameters. If anyone is deranged, we try to treat and manage, find what the reason is, where the cause is, and we try to manage that. Then for the woman, we do a hormonal assay, which is simply like a hormonal testing. We check for FSH and LH, which is your follicular stimulating hormone, and your LH, which is your luteinizing hormone. So this hormone helps your brain to communicate with your ovaries. We'll also check for the level of estrogen in your body, progesterone, but these are done on different days in your cycle. Then the anti-Mullerian hormone, which is your AMH. This tests for the number of eggs left in your ovaries. We also do a thyroid function test because we need to check, if your thyroid is fine, your thyroid hormones are fine, because that can actually affect fertility. We also do an ultrasound scan. So the ultrasound scan kind of visualizes your reproductive organs. We want to see if there's any structural abnormality. And then we may do something called a hysterosalpingogram, which is the X-ray of your uterus and your fallopian tube, because we want to check if your fallopian tubes are blocked. So this evaluation is going to help your healthcare provider to advise you accordingly. So if a fibroid is found during the ultrasound scan, depending on the location and the size of the fibroid, you might be advised to do a surgical removal of the fibroid. If during the hysterosalpingogram it is found that you have blockage of the tubes, then you may be advised to do IVF, in vitro fertilization, which is simply taking the woman's egg from the ovaries, taking the man's sperm, fertilizing it outside of the body in an incubator, and then transferring the resultant embryo back into the uterus of the woman. This is usually an expensive procedure. If after the evaluation you are diagnosed with something we call polycystic ovarian syndrome, popularly called PCOS, then you'll be placed on fertility medications, ovulation-inducing medications, and this will help you get pregnant. So in summary, evaluation by your healthcare provider is helpful in actually letting you know the reason you have not conceived yet. In some cases, after this evaluation, it shows that both you and your partner are fine. And in this case, we call it unexplained infertility. And in a case of unexplained infertility, you might actually be asked to go back and try some more, or you might be placed on ovulation-inducing medications as well. So we've come to the end of today's video. Remember, I am rooting for you. If you found today's video informative and you want more content like this video, share with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and see you in my next video.